Started. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And we'll start by doing a roll call. So from the commission members, we have Brandon Cruikshank.
I'm present, happy to join you this afternoon.
Justin Donardi.
Good afternoon or evening, all present.
Matt Eckhoff.
Present. Good afternoon.
John Hanson.
Good afternoon, present as well.
Bob Kuhn.
Present. Good afternoon.
And Josh Stone.
Hi, present.
Excellent. Sounds like we got a full house.
And Jim McCarthy is here also.
Excellent. Thanks, Jim. Is Lieutenant Ryan Turley, our non-voting commission member, present?
Yep, present.
Excellent. And Jeff Bauman?
I am here.
Awesome. Who do we have from city staff today?
Hey guys, Steph Santana, transportation engineer.
Hi all, I'm Chris Fair. I'm a transportation planner with the city.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Lemke. I'm a transportation engineer associate here at the city.
Good afternoon, Martin Entz, multimodal transportation planner for the city.
Good afternoon, all. Scott Overton, Public Works Director, City of Flagstaff.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Sam Beckett, Section Director, Streets Department for City of Flagstaff Public Works.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. At this time, we'll go into our preliminary general business, starting with public comment. This time, any member of the public may address the commission on any subject within the commission's jurisdiction that is not on this meeting's agenda. The Arizona Open Meeting Law prohibits the commission from discussing or taking action on an item that is not listed on the prepared agenda. Commissioners may, however, respond to criticism made by those addressing the commission, ask staff to review a matter, or ask the matter be placed on a future agenda. To address the commission for an item that is on the agenda, please wait for the chair to call for public comment at the time the item is heard. Do we have anybody who would like to address the commission? I'm connected on my phone, so it's hard for me to see all the notifications and that kind of stuff. So if there is anybody, please feel free to speak up. Not hearing anybody. I'll keep moving on. So we'll move on to new business. The first item in new business is the City of Flagstaff 5-year capital improvement program.
Mr. Chair, this is Jeff Bowman. I don't see Trevor Henry on the list of attendees. He may be hung up somewhere. So if you're okay, we might reorder and just keep going and get back to Trevor.
Jeff, I'm here.
Oh, you are there. I didn't see you on the list. Okay, great. Are you good to go?
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right.
All right, take it away, Trevor. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry about that. Just got here, so perfect timing. Good afternoon, members of Transportation Commission. Trevor Henry. I am the capital improvements engineer for the City of Flagstaff, and I think I've been here before about a year ago or so, and kind of went through some of the same information, but just wanted to give you an update on projects that we're dealing with within capital improvements for delivery, transportation, and streets. And so try to go relatively quick. And I do have some more information at the end of the presentation that we can kind of go over on actual projects that we're working through on the city's capital improvement program 5-year summary. So we'll just kind of go through that real quick. But at any point in the presentation, if you have questions, please go ahead and stop me and ask, and we can go from there. Sound good? All right, here we go. All right, so the first project I wanted to update you on is the Beulah University project, the realignment. So we're doing the roundabout west of Milton Avenue. We're also doing a new intersection there at Milton and University Avenue. Right now, currently it's 3 lanes right now. And what we're planning to do with the project is a 4-lane intersection. And we're also doing some pedestrian improvements. We're doing an underpass on the north side. I figured this out here. So let me do this real quick. Nope. Laser pointer. All right. So we do have a underpass that's going to happen on the north side of the intersection, and that will go in sometime this summer. So yeah, the roundabout, the underground, the grade is pretty much in. We're just waiting for pavement, which is going to be during the favorable weather. And then we'll also start on the intersection and the underpass sometime this summer. It is budgeted for 24 million. It's Proposition 403, which is the old tax, and then Proposition 419, which is the new tax. And there's kind of a breakdown of what makes up the budget. And then we started construction a little over a year ago, and we're hoping to be complete by next fall. So it's going to be roughly a 2-season job. Some of the work that we're doing next year is just kind of minor stuff. But the majority of the work will take place currently and then this coming season. Next project.
I have a quick question about that, Trevor.
Yes.
Will traffic be allowed on that when it's complete in fall of 2025, or can you just explain if there's any either vehicle or pedestrian access to those areas prior to that?
So right now, all the traffic is running on Milton, and everything is closed for work on the roundabout and the Beulah extension from the south. When they pave this entire area west of Milton, this will become our detour route. So everybody can come down at Forest Meadows, turn, come up Beulah Boulevard all the way to Frescus Avenue, which is the old University Avenue, and then make the turn. So once all the work is complete, pavement is done, everybody can use the west side, and then traffic will be shut down here at Milton and the intersection. And we have been working with ADOT on this. We do plan to have that possibly start maybe in May of this year and then run through the fall while we're doing the intersection improvements and then doing the underpass. Does that help?
That's great. Thanks.
Okay.
I have one question. What's the pedestrian access to cross Milton while that's closed? Will there just be, since it'll be closed, they can just walk across on the side of it, or?
So there will be one lane in either direction. So there'll still be a crosswalk that they can use.
Okay.
While the construction is going. Yeah. All right. Next one is John Wesley Powell. So this is an arterial roadway extension from roughly Butler, 4th Street, coming on the yellow line, all the way down, coming through the parcels, and then it'll tie into where JWP currently ends by Pine Canyon subdivision. And that includes bike and ped facilities. Right now we're working with these major parcel owners to figure out the alignment, kind of working through best scenario, best fit, as well as going through some agreements to figure out how we're going to get this designed completely and then constructed completely. Right now, the budget is 45 million. And just so that the Transportation Commission is aware, the city share is 40%, so roughly 18 million, and that's coming out of Proposition 419. And then the remainder is the large property owners. So 60% is going to be funded by these large property owners that you see on the screen here. Again, currently we're working on a specific plan, and we're also working on the design, kind of the preliminary items. And we're hoping to finish all of that this year, and then next year we'll start construction for roughly 3 seasons. And that'll be to complete the yellow line as shown on the screen. All right, moving on. Downtown Mile. So this is a corridor project, and it's roughly 6 projects kind of in the railway corridor as well as the Flagstaff downtown area. And we have the 6 projects is the Florence Walnut pedestrian underpass. It's the Milton Bridge reconstruction. There's also the Rio de Flag pedestrian underpass. There's some Amtrak station platform improvements. And there's also some at-grade crossings at Beaver and San Francisco related to the railway. So these 6 make up the Downtown Mile. There's also some coordination going on with Mountain Line's Downtown Connection Center. So there is some work here, some coordination going on. The budget for the entire corridor, the suite of projects, is roughly $56 million. And we have it broken down there. One of the big things I wanted to mention is we did receive an infra grant for $32 million, and that'll go towards construction. The city does have some funding. It's roughly almost $10 million, and that's going to come out of Proposition 419, the new tax. And then we have some contributions from BNSF and ADOT. And then we're currently in the design this year. We're hoping to be complete with maybe closer to 100% plans by the end of the calendar year. And then we'll dive into some of the construction next year, and then it'll go continue for the next 4 seasons. But it will start picking off some of these projects, some of these 6 projects that are shown here over the next 4 years. Right, I'm gonna keep going. Next one, this is the Lone Tree Overpass project. So this is Proposition 420. So Proposition 420 was voted on at the same time Proposition 419 was in place. So Lone Tree will provide an overpass, which is shown in blue or purple, I guess, depending on what color shows up there. There'll also be an extension of Lone Tree north of Butler Avenue. And then it will also tie into Route 66. So there'll be an intersection there, overpass, and some improvements north of Butler. We're also including what we're calling the Lone Tree Corridor. So that's going to be south of Butler. And it goes through Franklin Avenue, Sawmill, and then all the way down to O'Leary. So we're going to be adding this part of the Lone Tree Corridor, which is fully Proposition 419. So that's kind of why we have it broken out there as Proposition 420 and 419. So everything you see on the screen, So there is some work also with the railroad. We have to drop these tracks. So what's shown in orange, we have to go a little further to the west and a little further to the east, and we actually have to drop the rails roughly 12 feet so that everything can work with the overpass, with the railroad, with the intersection. So that's another part of that project there as well. So the entire budget for everything you see on the screen is about 115 million. We have it broken down there. Construction is roughly 81 million, and that also includes south of Butler. So if you remember, Proposition 420 was 73 million when it was voted upon. So 73 million is for the portions north of Butler, and then the rest of what you see there is for the south. So there is some design at 9 million, and then staff time, permits, and real estate. Right now, we're almost 100% with the plans, so we hope to be complete by this summer with the plans, and then we'll just start diving into portions of the construction. I think we have slated maybe this spring to do some work south of Butler. And the reason why we can do that while we're still working on the design is we're doing a design build. So that's an alternate delivery method, similar to a construction manager at risk. So that allows us to get portions of the project designed and completed, and then we can actually dive into construction while other portions are still being designed. So we hope to have this portion south of Butler Avenue under construction this summer. Right, I'm gonna keep going. So this is the Butler Avenue protected intersections and bike lanes. So we're calling this the Butler Avenue Street Conversion Project. So this is going to make up portions of other projects that are related to 419 and kind of make it one big giant conversion street project. If you remember, a couple of years ago, council wanted to do a bike lane, separated bike lane. And so we did those concrete bumpers along Butler Avenue. And it was a pilot program, which basically is trying to figure out if this is going to work for us or not. There were some good things, some bad things about it, but we were able to look into doing a different type of separated bike facility. So this project will have separated bike facilities, and they're actually going to be elevated. So if you can imagine where the curb and gutter is now on Butler Avenue and where the bike lane is, roughly 4.5 feet, 5 feet. So we're going to get rid of that bike lane and we're going to build up essentially another sidewalk lane. So that'll be elevated and that will be designated only for bikes. And then the sidewalk will be on the kind of currently where it is now. So there'll be pedestrians and bikes being able to maneuver and go through this corridor. Also included are protected intersections at Beaver Street and San Francisco Street. So shown here, we have these kind of laid out for the intersections, so protected intersections. We're also doing an enhanced beacon crossing at O'Leary and Butler. So roughly right in here, we are going to do a crossing, an enhanced beacon crossing. So roughly pedestrians can go up and push the button and then get the vehicles to stop and then they can walk across. Also included in this is near the High Country Conference Center is an existing pedestrian solar powered crossing. So we're going to modify that, upgrade that to put in some more standardized hardwired pedestrian crossings. So all of this is roughly budgeted at 12 million, and all of that is going to come out of Proposition 419. Staff was able to submit for a Safe Streets for All grant, and we're successful in receiving that at 9.6 million. There is also a transportation alternative grant that they received for approximately 400,000, which is for the design of the protected intersections. So all of that is going to go into this project, and it kind of helps with funding coming out of Proposition 419. And right now we're planning to start design this year, and then it'll roll into next year, and then maybe start construction in late 2025, and then possibly go for maybe 2 seasons, if not another 3rd season as well. So that is the Butler Avenue Street Conversion Project. I'm going to keep going. So here is the Butler 4th Improvement Project. So this is over on the east side of Butler Avenue, on the east side of the city, going into Country Club. So it's basically I-40 all the way to Sonawa Heights subdivision. And what we're doing there is a complete corridor. We're doing roundabouts. We're also doing a complete street section. So we're going to take the existing 2 lanes, 1 in each direction. We're going to include a median at 14 feet roughly, and then 2 travel lanes on each side. We'll have a parkway, and then we'll have that very similar 5 feet, which is for designated bikes, and then a 6-foot pedestrian path. So all of that will be planned and will be designed and constructed for this section. The roundabouts will be at Butler and 4th. Staff has been working on that extensively. There's also going to be the roundabouts at Harold Ranch Road and Butler. So all of that will be in place. Currently we are at a 30% design level. We're kind of getting to that point where we're looking to bring us construction manager at risk on board to help us be part of our team and kind of take this to into construction. And we plan to do that, complete the design this year and then start construction or portions of the project in 2025 and 2026. The budget for this project is at 18 million. Again, it's all funded out of Proposition 419. We're looking at roughly construction about 16 million, and right now acquisition is about 2 million. And one thing I wanted to mention for the Transportation Commission is staff is going to be submitting for a raise grant. And the deadline for that is at the end of this month, February 28th. And if successful, we will have enough money to fund the entire project through the grant. I believe the grant that we're requesting is a little over 19 million, and then the city will have to provide a match of 10 million. So roughly it's a 65-35 split between the grant and city funds. Right, moving along. Lockett Cedar 4th Roundabout. So this is a project that will be administered by ADOT, and it's part of the Highway Safety Improvement Program. Basically, it's funding through ADOT grant. And we are going to take the existing intersection, which is signalized, and we will build a modernized roundabout. So what you see there on the screen, included in the roundabout will be pedestrian crossings. And we did have a nice conversation with the city council about including Z crossings. So that gives the pedestrians that are using these crossings the ability to turn and actually look at potentially vehicles coming their way. So we do show that on the west side and the south side. This is a draft diagram. I don't think we have a Z crossing on the north side. Just wasn't enough room. Again, this is kind of a concept exhibit that we were trying to put through, but we don't have the Z crossings on the north or the east, but we have them on the south and the west. And with each intersection, we will have beacons. So the pedestrians will have to come, hit the button, and then the motorists, the vehicles will stop, and then they can cross. So this project is budgeted at 6 million. So the HSIP funding is 4 million, and then the city share, or excuse me, the HSIP grant is 2 million, and the city share is 4 million. And again, it's all coming out of Proposition 419. We are going to complete the, go ahead.
Trevor, I just have a quick question. You said this
Yeah.
was a draft design shown here. The way I look at this on the Z crossings, people look away from traffic. But so what I heard you say was you're going to flip those so that when they're in the Z crossings and they turn, they look into traffic.
So let's take the west side here. So as they cross, they're going to get to the center median, and then they'll turn and then actually have time to reset and hit the button, and then they'll be able to look. It kind of prevents them from doing a straight shot all the way across.
Yeah, I guess. Okay. So they turn to the left when they get there. And so they're briefly facing, they're crossing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you didn't mean that they will turn. It's not designed so they turn and face traffic. It's just designed to have a pause so that they can't go straight.
Correct. Because if they don't, if it's a straight shot, they're just going to hit the button and go. But
Okay.
with this kind of Z crossing, they actually have to turn, pause, and then start thinking about going again, which gives them a little bit of that understanding to maybe they need to look and turn first.
Yeah, it's just if you flip those around, they would also actively be turning and facing the traffic that's coming at them. So,
And from my understanding, when they go through the design, it does, they have to consider the size of these medians. So it would be nice if we could turn this around, but there's just not enough room because cars have to stack here, possibly stack here and here. So there's that kind of goes into the design of how these how these crossings fit in.
okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, no worries. All right, I'm gonna keep going. Schweitzer Canyon Trail. So this is a Foots trail. It's a relatively large trail. It's part of the Foots master plan for the city of Flagstaff. It's going to be an aggregate trail, which starts roughly where Lone Tree, where this is the overpass where Lone Tree will come in. So it's going to start roughly kind of in that area where the little auto park mall used to be for selling vehicles. Starts there, goes along the southern edge of Schweitzer Canyon Mesa, near the Fry's store, turns, and then dives in all the way to potentially where Schweitzer Canyon, the roundabout, is. So this is a trail site. I don't know the length of it offhand, but it's going to be an aggregate surface trail. There will be stormwater erosion improvements included with that. It's budgeted out of Proposition 419, so 2.4 million is what this project has been budgeted at. We're looking at probably construction at about 2 million. And one thing right now is we're just waiting for our purchasing department to get everything completed in their review, and then that project will be solicited for construction bids. And we're hoping to receive those in the next month, open, get to council, and then hopefully start construction maybe in June or May of this year, and then be complete in this calendar year.
I'm curious, Trevor, what's the plan for getting it down to the Route 66 grade, or will this just kind of go into the Cherry Hill neighborhood on that side?
So this will go into the Cherry Hill neighborhood now with the Lone Tree Overpass project. There is plans and thoughts to bring it down to Route 66 elevation so that it can connect.
Okay, so this summer it'll just kind of go to the Cherry Hill neighborhood, and then the future plans will happen when that construction happens.
That is correct. Actually, I see Martin's hand raised. He might have a better answer or response to that. Go ahead, Martin.
Thank you, Trevor. Mr. Chair, it's actually a two-step process. So the Lone Tree project won't make that connection, but we have plans to do some concept planning to see how we can manage that grade. We've talked to the property owner there about acquisition of an easement. So if we're able to figure out a way to construct that connection down, that will be a future project, but not part of Lone Tree. I think once this trail goes in and Lone Tree goes in, the two Foots connections will be so close it will seem pretty obvious, although there's a pretty significant grade difference, probably 20-25 feet between the two. Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification. Yeah, I've been looking at that area since I saw this plan, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to get down. Okay, that's it for me.
Awesome, thank you. So those are the projects kind of that we're working on currently. So just wanted to give you a quick update on kind of where we are and what we're doing. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about how we go through at the city our budget process to develop a CIP, which is again the Capital Improvement Program, the 5-year summary. So typically this is our timeline. Usually in October, we kind of go through where we are with what we're doing, and then we talk to new project owners, and that can be different divisions within the city, and we figure out what projects have been slated already in past years that are coming up that need to be programmed and delivered. Kind of go through that process in October. Usually in November, December, we'll start to reconcile current projects and kind of see where we are, if we need to request new money, because as everybody knows, costs go up. It's kind of been the trend lately. And then we just start looking at new projects and we figure out what budgets are needed, what costs need to be incorporated into these projects and then to the summary itself, the CIP. And then in January, we get with our finance department, we input all the new money requests that we need to look at, and then we start to look at finalizing projects that we are currently working on. So if we need to either adjust by making a request for additional money, or if, and sometimes we do have projects that maybe have a surplus. So we start to identify those and we can start moving money around in funds and 419 and 420 and HERF and different types of other projects that we can start moving some money around. And then we also start working on what we have as a 10-year plan. So there's a 10-year plan, very similar to the 5-year. And this 10-year plan just starts to kind of look a little further out and figure out projects that need to be programmed or we need to start talking about and kind of get ideas of what's happening there. And then typically in March or April, we have the past 3 years, we've had a special retreat specifically for the CIP itself. We go through and we identify projects, give updates to council, and then we actually talk about projects. And if you remember a couple of years ago, when we had the first one, our council identified the separated bike lanes, the pilot program. So that came out of there. That was a discussion about looking at protected intersections. So we started looking at how those requests were made during the March meeting. And then we roll into April, which is where the city looks at the final tentative budget. And they go over it, they look at it, they see what's there with regards to the CIP. And then in June, when everything is good, it gets adopted. So that's technically the yearly timeline for how the development of the CIP goes through. And again, there's always questions, there's always special needs that finance will talk with us and get an idea. And then we've always had questions, well, how do you identify projects, or how do they get to be part of the program, the 5-year, the CIP 5-year? And then here are just the list of I guess, priorities or just concepts or just ideas. They can be bonds or proposition initiated, voter approved. So that's like Proposition 419, 420, recently 441. So that was the emergency related items and the spruce wash, the flooding. It can be public safety, core service. That can be already programmed or funded as part of maybe as an example, projects that are that have been in the 10-year are getting closer to being developed, so they have been programmed for a little while. There's grant funded projects. That's big nowadays. When we have a bigger project, we start looking at if there's a possibility to look for a grant to get something in there to help fund these projects. There's a master plan. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a Foots master plan that Martin works on. So if those projects can all be combined as part of a master plan that can get in, that could be a priority for the CIP. Community needs, there's special requests, critical needs. Again, this one is an example of the separated bike lanes. And then boards and commissions, so Transportation Commission, other commissions as well that make a request. I think the Boulder Point traffic calming project was a project that was discussed here with the Transportation Commission, and that project is actually in our program to be delivered this year. And then support services, just things that we do here at the city. If there's needs that need to be completed, addressed, there are support services and that can be a project that gets into the 5-year. I bolded core service, community needs, and support services. So sometimes those are more of the council priorities or what they kind of look for. We did talk about those at our our retreat that we had last week. And so those are just kind of priorities on how the projects get into the CIP 5-year. There's just my information. You know, on the city website, my information is there. You can always ask for questions or give me a call, send me an email, and we can go into some information if that's what's needed. And so before I end, I wanted to just kind of highlight some of the projects that we're currently working on. So our CIP for transportation and streets, or streets and transportation, is roughly 3 pages of the 15 pages that make up the CIP. So the projects highlighted in yellow are the ones we're currently working on. The numbers or the budget highlighted in green are currently being worked on this year, this fiscal year. So Beulah Extension, we're working with about $10.8 million. We're getting to a point where we're almost at that level of spending 10.8 this year. And then the pavement overlay. So this is a project that Scott Overton, Sam Beckett, and their group work on. They have a yearly budget of 7.4. Coconino Estates, we're finishing up this project as part of the road repair and street safety. Then we have Lone Tree Railroad overpass. We have 30 million budgeted for this year. And due to some property acquisitions, it kind of got delayed a little bit, but we're planning to deliver that project moving forward. But we're working on it, budgeted currently this year. And then we have the 4th Street Extension, JWP. So we did combine those. So that's basically the JWP, the slide I went over earlier, the yellow line. So that's this project. We have about 1 million that we're working on for the specific plan and for the design. And then we have the Butler 4th improvements, Lone Tree, Butler, and O'Leary. Those are the green numbers are what we're currently working with in fiscal year 24. And then we have the Solier Fanning Wash Crossing. And that kind of leads into the orange highlighted numbers, which will be next year. So those are the projects that will come next, and we'll have to start facilitating, planning, scoping, and start moving those towards, unless they're a multi-year project like Lone Tree and Butler 4th. Those are multi-year projects that will just continue on. But those are the projects on this first sheet, kind of giving you a quick update on where we are and what we're doing and what we're going to do next year. This is the second sheet of that, and we do have Lockett 4th Street Roundabout, dark sky lighting, Boulder Point traffic calming, as I mentioned earlier. This year we're working with 386,000, and we're hoping to get that advertised here soon. Then we have the Country Club Oakmont project. We're working on some planning and scoping there. And then we kind of dive into 419 actual items, Foots Repair, Schweitzer Canyon Trail, and these other trail, Fox Glen, Single Track Forest, Mountain View Access, Bow and Arrow Trail Tunnel. So these are other projects that we're currently working on. Again, green is what we're working on this year. Orange is for next year. But all of that is kind of on the slate. And this is the 3rd page of that. And again, it's related to 419. We have the sidewalk infill program that we'll work on next year. We have the protected intersections. We did do a feasibility study last year. And then again, this coming year, it's going to be part of the Butler Avenue Street conversion project. So that's kind of why I highlighted green this year, orange next year. That'll be part of that bigger street conversion project, as well as this enhanced beacon. This is the other one I was talking about. At Butler and O'Leary, we'll put in a beacon crossing there. So we have some money this year, and then the majority of it goes into next year to be part of that bigger project. And then the last one I wanted to talk about is First Mile, Last Mile. That is a grant project to deliver pedestrian and bicycle projects. Mountain Line received a grant and we are working with them. They are going to fund the construction. They will with that grant, and we will deliver and manage those projects for them. And so we do have some money there, roughly 1.3 million, but we will have that over the next 3 years. So 24, fiscal year 25, fiscal year 26, and I think we'll roll into the very early starts of fiscal year 27. So those are the projects that we're working on, kind of giving you an idea in our actual CIP summary of what we're doing. And project updates there, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Trevor, for putting that
Yeah.
together. We'll start with commissioner questions, then we'll go to public comment, and then we'll do commissioner comments. So are there any commissioners that have questions? And feel free to just pipe up.
Hey, Trevor, I just had a quick question as it relates to dropping the rails for the Lone Tree overpass. What is the linear length of that drop and getting it back up to road grade? I imagine it's going to be back to road grade as you go westbound to San Francisco and then further for the Milton overpass, but.
Yes, so that was going to be at the east side of San Francisco Street where the rails cross, where BNSF rails start. So roughly in that area, and it goes all the way to Ponderosa Parkway.
Copy. And then we have good delineators to keep any traffic from the top side to make their way down.
Can you help me understand that a little better, your question? Delineators?
Yes, just fencing or anything that is a fall protection for people that might be on the ground level and keep them from getting down there.
Yeah, so on the overpass, we'll have the fencing very similar to the 4th Street Bridge. And then we will also have, I believe we'll have some fencing that will close off the railroad. But there also is a footpath that will have to dive under the bridge. So I think there'll be some fencing there to help separate BNSF right away and city right away.
Copy. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else with questions? I have a couple I can chime in too.
I have one, sorry. Just curious if in the development of the CIP timeline, if there was, I think it might have been discussed before, maybe like bringing initial ideas to this commission in October. So it's not like we're presented with a final plan at the end, kind of after everything's already roughly decided on for the year.
Yeah, I think Jeff and I had talked earlier, or had been talking, kind of how we can maybe get what we're doing already. So maybe there's an opportunity in October, November to kind of bring to the commission, the Transportation Commission, where we are with projects in the current year. Maybe what I showed at the very end, we can do that earlier in this process and kind of see where things are, get some feedback, some input. And that can maybe help us as we get to maybe the January timeline.
Okay, great, thanks.
Trevor, what level of cost or complexity gets a project on the CIP versus some aspect of it getting done outside of that?
There really isn't a cost priority so much. So like here, we have, initially we had the Lone Tree Butler O'Leary doing some scoping work at $26,000, with the majority of it kind of being in construction and design. But I know Martin's program has trails that aren't, really costly, but they're still needed. So we still have some trails like 88,000, 115,000. So there's really no threshold for how big of a project or how small of a project. It's needed, and it meets those priorities that I was going through earlier. If it meets one of those, then it'll get into our CIP.
Okay. I have a question around, those are a lot of big projects. Are there concerns or thoughts on like the impact just to traffic around town, as there's, multiple different intersections on multiple routes that are all going to be sort of under construction at the same time?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we have been kind of kicking that around in my capital improvement section, and then even talking with our city engineer a little bit, knowing that we will have portions of the downtown mile going, Lone Tree Overpass. Later this year, we're going to have the Rio de Flag flood control project possibly kicking off with some type of construction going on. Beulah University is going to be finishing up. We'll have that Milton. So there's going to be a lot of projects happening. And at some point, Butler 4th could start as well. So there's going to be projects everywhere. The city will be blowing up with construction. So one of the things that we've talked about and that maybe we're kicking around is Arizona has 511 with just traffic over the entire state. So maybe there's a possibility of doing an interactive website that you could click on and then kind of see what's being constructed, what's not being constructed, where delays are, where we have a closure. So maybe that's something we could kick around, but we just haven't really got there yet. But it is a thought process that we wanted to investigate.
Okay. I'm glad to hear you guys are thinking of stuff. I know, citizens are love to complain about things, and
Yeah.
Traffic and construction is one of them. So
Right.
any way we can get out ahead of that and sort of prep them, and anything we could do would be good as far as communication and letting people know what to expect.
And we do our usual media release. So we'll send out a notice whenever we're going to have a street closure, something that's relatively big. We'll have a media release, social media included. But I think it's okay for one project to do that, but when you have multiple projects together, it has to be a little higher thought process. So that's kind of why we were thinking maybe an interactive website or something that the public can click on, citizens can look for. Maybe it's a city website, maybe it's a link on the city website. Just, a lot of thoughts that we need to work through.
Any other commissioner questions before we go to public comment? Not hearing any. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this presentation? I see a raised hand. I would say go for it.
All right, thank you. This is Sam Meyer. I just wanted to make a very, very short comment on Z crossings because these have been discussed at the Bicycle Advisory Committee meetings. When we've had those discussions, a lot of bicyclists have felt that those are actually more challenging to cross as a bicyclist because you're traveling at a higher speed than a pedestrian, and it introduces conflict between bicyclists and pedestrians seeking to use the same infrastructure. We've generally sided on having them because they are safer for pedestrians. I just wanted to say that there's been some discussion that, having to stop in the middle for crosswalk is just a little harder if you're traveling at a bicyclist speed. And if that's the infrastructure you're intended to use.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Any other public comment? Any discussion from the commissioners? Any other thoughts on Josh's comment, or how we could be helpful, and what role we could play in this? Jim?
Just a quick comment. I think on some of these pedestrian things where we go across, sometimes pedestrians think when they push the button that gives them free rein to go all the way across. And it's only free rein to go halfway across. So it'd probably be good if we had some kind of very obvious sign to the pedestrians that, look for traffic again, or you have to push the button again. Even the ones that are across Butler now, I don't think they have anything that tells the pedestrians that, hey, you got to push the button again to get across the other half. Does that make sense?
Thanks, Jim. I see a couple of other hands raised. Feel free to chime in.
Kim Austin with MetroPlan. I just have a quick comment to piggyback off of what Jim said. Remember, this intersection is, there are 2 schools that are right there with children that are going to be using that intersection. So I just want to make sure that we need to make that as safe as possible for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. To sort of add on to what Josh said, if we can see the presentation earlier, or if we can help with priorities or any of those kinds of things, it'd be great to get involved in this, in October, November, or sometime, or when it works out with a normal cycle. And then one other comment. Sorry, go ahead.
I'll wait till you're done. I was just going to follow up with that thought, but go ahead.
Okay. And then I was just gonna say, as you're thinking about how to try and different ways to communicate to the public around all these different projects, that sounds like it could be a conversation for the Transportation Commission as well, and the opportunity for public comment, and to put something out so the public knows they can come and comment on that as well at that same time. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks. I was just going to follow up on your and Josh's comment regarding maybe an October, November discussion of that earlier spreadsheet. That's something we can definitely accommodate within kind of the flow of what we usually do. And so we can try that next year. I know this was a bit of discussion following up from the December meeting where we talked about roles of the Transportation Commission, and there's some roles spelled out explicitly in the enabling legislation that talk about how the commission should be involved in the CIP process. So we can, we need to update that language in the enabling legislation. And part of that will just be our experience working through this a couple of times. So thanks for that feedback. And yeah, we'll make a note, probably November, we can, or October rather, we can come back.
Thanks, Jeff. Well, with that, unless there's any other comments or discussion from the commissioners, we'll move on to the next presentation.
All right. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Trevor.
Yep. Thank you.
Hi, Steph Santana, City of Flagstaff Transportation Engineering. Last meeting, we discussed having a presentation regarding work orders and a review of our previous year work orders. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. You're more than welcome to stop me in the middle if you've got any questions. The packet that we sent out with this has every single work order, and I'm just going to highlight a few of them that may be of interest to the commission. So we put together this map showing all locations of the work orders. We throw in work orders that have to do with maintenance. We throw in work orders for red curb, signage, streetlights, and requests. Some of these are citizen-driven complaints, concerns. Some of them are our own people asking for us to put signs in our own lots. Just a few examples of what those are. This is an example of one of the work orders. This is a red curb. I believe this one was citizen-driven. People were parking within too close to the intersection, within the intersection, too close to the crosswalks and whatnot. So this is just an example of adding some red curb. We tried to get as detailed as possible. We go to the site and mark where the red curb extents are and ask Public Works to go out there and stripe it. Moving on. This is another example. These are some Killips school signs. We received requests, I believe, from the school and citizens and drivers in the area to update some of the school signs at the new Killip location. And this was a pretty intense work order, multi-paged, and we worked with the school to get these signs up. And I think most of them are done. Maybe a few of them need to still be put up, but that's a school example. This is an example of one that came to the commission, and you guys had to vote to designate Mountaineer Road a truck prohibited route. So this is the work order that we submit to streets, and they have since added that little plaque up there that says Dodge and Mountaineer. Moving on. This was another one that came to the commission on the streetlight removal. We had the petition from one of the neighbors over there to remove a streetlight and submitted a work order similar to the other ones that you've seen. So those are just the few that I wanted to show you and highlight, and totally here for questions. I've got the document open. I can pull it up if anyone had any questions about any of the other work orders from last year. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph. Are there any questions from commissioners? Steph, I have a question. Do citizens know how to request something? Like, is there a website with a link on it or a general email, or is it just kind of different ways of citizens reaching out to people to get requests in?
Yeah, so there is something called Request Tracker. It's on our website. If you say, if you just type into Google, I've got a comment for the city, it'll bring you to this specific web page. And we get lots of requests through that. We also just get emails from people. We've got our emails and our phone numbers online, and I receive concerns and complaints weekly. I noticed Jeff's hands up. If we can let him jump in.
I'm good. It was nothing urgent. I just wanted to mention that this item was also follow up to our discussion about Transportation Commission roles and responsibilities. So one of those roles was to take a look at these work orders on an annual basis. We haven't been good at doing it every single year, but since we had just talked about it in December, it's like, okay, let's do it in February, and we may just put this on the calendar for every February. So there was nothing, nothing particular that you needed to see. It's just, we're supposed to do this annually for you all to take a look at the activities on the work order front. So just want to give you a little bit of background.
Thanks, Jeff. If there are no questions from the commission, we'll go to public comment then. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment? Hearing and seeing none. Any Now it's time for commissioner discussion. Is there any discussion from the commissioners? I'm not hearing anybody else. I want to say thanks for putting that packet together. It was helpful to be able to look through and see everything that gets done. And glad to hear that there's a couple of different routes that citizens are able to make their voice heard and request improvements to their daily lives. That the transportation team is able to, at the city is able to accommodate.
Thank you.
All right, so that concludes new business. We'll move on to old business. This is the Fremont Boulevard Traffic Calming and Roadway Art Grant.
Yes, thank you, Chair Koenig and Transportation Commission. Can you all hear me okay? Yes, I'm getting a thumbs up. Very good. Wow, a little bubble appeared too. All right, well, thank you for having me today. My name is David Lemke. I'm a transportation engineer associate here at the city. And today I'll be presenting on Fremont Boulevard, an update on the traffic calming project that has been ongoing in that neighborhood. All right, so I wanted to start off with some background because I know we have some newer commissioners who might not be familiar with the project or the area, but Fremont Boulevard is in northwest Flagstaff, as you can see in this picture, in the Cheshire neighborhood. It's a 4-lane road with bike lanes on each side and parking near Cheshire Park. This is just a street view of that. And requests for traffic calming came in 2021 and 2022 from residents. And when we went out and studied the road, we found that it did qualify for residential traffic calming based on the guide. And we conducted a neighborhood survey and walkthrough to get a better idea of how to accommodate the neighborhood and how to address the issues. We knew it was speeding, but it seemed that there was also some crossing concerns. And so we came up with a traffic calming plan that like one of the big goals of the traffic calming was to reduce the lanes from 2 in each direction to 1 in each direction. And so we have 2 different cross sections that occur along different sections of the roadway. One with a center left turn lane that has a median island interspaced along it, and one with without a center left turn lane and the space being put onto the parking lanes at the bottom. And we're also including radar feedback signs and a splitter island near Fala and a pedestrian refuge island near the park, near the existing crossing. And we had an email list from our original neighborhood walkthrough neighborhood survey, and we sent our new plans out to the neighborhood along with a link to a survey to ask them for general comments on the plans. And so we've gathered some data that way, and generally we had positive feedback with some minor adjustments or minor things to change or ideas on how to improve the plan. So it's still ongoing on getting these plans to 100%, but we're getting closer and closer. And then concurrently, there was a lot of neighborhood interest to incorporate art into traffic calming on Fremont through collaboration with Fala. And MetroPlan applied for the Bloomberg Asphalt Art Grant, and they were awarded $25,000 to do an asphalt art project along the road. And we've been working with MetroPlan to create a canvas on Fremont Boulevard where we could do the art and use it as a traffic calming measure. And this would occur prior to our final design plans, or prior to our final designs that I showed you before with the refuge island. And I'll go ahead and show you, this is Fremont Boulevard. North is to the left, but the turquoise areas are the areas where we're comfortable with putting art into the roadway. And so this would incorporate elements of our final design, like narrowing down to 1 lane near the crossing, and incorporating the art. So we're going to see how this performs, and we might incorporate this into our final design, depending on how it works out. But yeah, that's where we're at with that. And I'll go ahead and end the presentation there and open it up for some questions.
Thanks, David. So we'll start with questions from commissioners, then we'll go to public comment and then have some final discussion by commissioners. So is there any questions from other commissioners? I'm hearing none. I don't have any myself, which seems rare. So let's go to public comment. There are members of the public that would like to comment. I see one person with who raised their hand, and please just go ahead and speak.
Hi, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I'm Kate Morley. I'm the Executive Director of Metro Plan. It's good to see you all. I just want to take a moment and offer some gratitude, particularly for Jeff, who was willing to let us apply for this grant and kind of experiment on a roadway with something very new to the city. And then also to David, who's worked really hard on the plan sets that you saw today, in a way where we can get art on the roadway and try some things out that help us evaluate those long-term plans. So just really appreciative of them and the whole engineering team for their work on this. With me today is Kim Austin. She's our new transportation demand management planner. She started 2 weeks ago. She's taking over this project, and I wanted to do a quick intro to her for you. She has served on BAC and PAC for many years, so she may be familiar to you. Why did we apply for this? In general, we see this as an opportunity to try out something new and see if it works and learn lessons. And it may not work, and then we learn those lessons too. So we expect parts of it to be great and maybe other parts of it where we learn something, which is part of the goal. And you know, if we could bring this other places in town is yet to be seen, depending on those lessons. I do want to point out that asphalt art is meant to be temporary. So this is not meant to be in place. We're trying to communicate that clearly to the public. It will fade. Our brutal desert sun will make our art project slowly disappear. And maybe not that slowly. So we had a great community meeting last night. I think the public's very excited about this. And we hope that you all will mark your calendars for May 18th, which is our scheduled painting day. And hope you'll come out and check that out with us. So thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Kate. Any other members of the public that would like to speak? I'm hearing none and seeing none. So
I think we have one hand up from Audrey.
Audrey, go ahead. Sorry, like I can't actually see people. So yeah, that's why I say just go ahead and speak. So go ahead, Audrey.
No worries. Thanks so much, Joe. And I am a member of the Cheshire community, and I just wanted to make a comment today to also share my gratitude and thanks to Jeff and David and Martin and the whole planning team at the city around this project for really hearing our feedback over the course of, I think it's been like 2 or 3 years of transportation commission meetings, city council meetings, and finally I think it was back in May, the public walkthrough, and really incorporating. So for those commissioners that might be new, this plan in its first iteration looked really different than what it is now. And I just want to express a lot of gratitude and excitement for this new plan that really does emphasize pedestrian crossing safety, especially at the park. It emphasizes bike lanes more visibly throughout the entire stretch of this part of Fremont, more parking for the townhome community, for the parents picking up FALA students, and diminishing that like congestion and overlapping needs of kids getting on and off buses, bikers, cars, right around the 3 p.m. pickup. So I think this plan has really come a long way and is a testament to the community engagement that was done by the city engineers. And so I really applaud y'all and can't wait to work on this, like what I think is a win-win, having FALA students help with artists in town, community members, the city, this is true like public service in action. And so I just want to say thank you so much for having, congratulations to Metro Plan for getting the grant, but for having this move forward so fluidly. And I think as a member of the public, I would just like to hear a little bit more about the phasing of this and what are the steps and sort of timing, because as it looks like, oh, maybe, you know, in a few months we would have all the things in this plan, but I think actually it's going to be more phased and integrate with the art and maybe snow plowing and elevation of islands and things like that, which will be more infrastructure intensive. So I'm hoping maybe someone can speak to that. Thanks again.
Nice. Thank you, Audrey. Joe, am I allowed to respond to that? Because I do have some answers for Audrey as far as the phasing.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, Audrey, as far as phasing, we are planning to do the art project first this summer, and then with plans to do the final installation the next summer in 2025. But yeah, and we'll communicate with the neighborhood as that develops with these plans. Like there's going to be a lot of public outreach through Metro Plan with Kim and through the whole process, like on what the art's going to look like and all that. But yes, we'll keep you informed. But so far, we're planning on the art this summer, and then the final design plans the next summer. All right, thank you.
Any final commissioner discussion? Not hearing any. Yeah, thanks, David. And let's move on to the next. Whatever's next on our agenda. It's like City of Flagstaff Butler Avenue corridor update.
That is correct, Mr. Chair, and that'll actually be me again presenting. So I'll go ahead and cue this up. Yeah. Yep. Running it back one more time here. Let me go ahead and open this up. So thank you, Chair Koenig and Commission, for the opportunity to be here. My name is David Lemke. I'm excited to present on the Butler corridor update. It is a very like all the things we present are important, but this is an important project. And so I just ask if we do have comments, if we could save them till the end, because we do have a good amount of content. I want to make sure that we have a chance to go through all of it tonight. And I did number the slides, so hopefully it'll be easy if you do have a question or a comment to jot it down. It's like, oh, slide number 7, 6, however it may be. And yeah, so we'll go ahead and dive into this. So I guess one thing I do want to mention is that we are bringing this to you to provide information on the project and to gather your comments and feedback as the Transportation Commission. And we have already presented this to the Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and we will present it to Council on February 27th, and Council will provide our final direction. Let me go ahead and go to the next slide. So what are our topics? Tonight, we will cover an update on the pilot bike lanes, the findings from the Butler Avenue Speed Study, and information on future grant and city-funded projects that are planned to occur along Butler Avenue. And I'd also like to mention, I will get some help from our Public Works Department on presenting this on the side of the pilot bike lanes. And so that they'll be hopping in here in a little bit as well, but I'll let you know when that happens. First, we will cover the pilot bike lanes. When we spoke on this subject last summer, we were tasked with identifying sections of the pilot bike lanes which could be removed. To improve snow operations along Butler Avenue and Beaver Street, we collaborated with Public Works and the Bicycle Advisory Committee to find a balance of sections that could be removed. And this and the following maps show the sections which have been removed. This map shows Butler from Milton to Sawmill, with Milton being in the top left and Sawmill being in the bottom right. And this map shows Beaver from Forest to Cherry. And now I will hand things over to our Public Works Department to talk about the pilot bike lanes.
Thanks, David. Good afternoon, commissioners. We appreciate the time today to go through this. This particular project, as you know, has been going on for a while. It has been a really good project in the sense of we've learned a lot. When we kick off some of these pilot projects, they're simply that because we're trying to learn, trying to better understand what works in our current infrastructure, what works in our city, and what doesn't. So some of the stuff we're going to go over today is the update on as we've kind of learned what's working, what's not working with these separated curbs. We've learned that there were at this point more cons than pros with the separated curbs. So we started looking at what are the other alternatives? What else can we do to start balancing things out? And I say that simply because as I was mentioning this to the transport or the bicycle commission and the pedestrian commission last week, from my perspective as a section director of public works, I have to look at the 60,000 foot, everybody all encompassing. How do we reduce hazards across the board? How do we increase efficiencies? How do we make things smoother and safer for everybody in no matter what mode of transportation they choose to use? So as we went into this project, it was one of those projects as we implemented. It was a fast implementation, trying to understand what funding was going to take, what the maintenance was going to be, how those maintenance obligations would impact operations. We learned a lot in that first year. We collected a lot of data. We also tracked a lot of our hours, staff time, just to ensure we could gain the most out of this potential project. Some of the stuff we've seen out of this project here was we saw a significant increase in accidents and vehicle accidents. Somebody asked me, well, why is that important? You know, the separation between the vehicles and the bikes is the most important thing. I said, yes, it could be. But as I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, I think it came to a realization is if I had my daughter riding a bicycle in that separated bike lane, the one thing I would not be confident in is that little curb stopping a vehicle or an accident in that sense. When vehicles are out of control, they're simply out of control. They go over curbs all the time. So it was one of those, we started looking at it as, okay, we need to start balancing this out, right? Is that whole zero, what is that, zero, what's that terminology? Vision zero. There we go. That's what I was trying to figure out. Trying to figure out, like, how do we balance that out? We can't see an increase in accidents and say that the road's getting safer. It just didn't work. So we said, what else can we do in here? One of the items that came up here was this double stripe. And I think many of you have seen that transition on the roadway. And we started looking at, we realized this is something that we could do not just within this corridor, we could extend it beyond this project and see how it works. We started that transition in the summer of 23. Council was supportive of it. We took out some of the high impact areas, the areas that we were seeing the most impact from these curbs from all perspectives. And we've heard, honestly, a lot of good feedback from this, whether it be from bicycle or pedestrian or vehicles. And we've heard very little negative feedback, which has been really good for us, just understanding what is the community expectations and what does this look like as we transition. So that's what we're calling it. It's a transition. Our goal isn't to remove anything. I think we all believe that we need to be moving in the right direction. We need to find a path forward, but we all acknowledge the fact that this particular pilot wasn't successful. So how do we find success? Part of that was the grant. You heard about that earlier from Trevor as he was talking about the capital project. I think that really is success. That's what success looks like in this piece of infrastructure. It's just not designed to accommodate all of these modes of transportation well. So I think this rebuild is going to be the ticket. But until then, how do we find the balance in all of this? I say that simply because part of this, as we look into it, is the overall maintenance of this project. We've seen a significant increase. It is the most expensive and labor-intensive 3 miles of roadway we have in the entire 700 miles of roadway within the city. Now, does that make it a bad thing? Not necessarily. But what it has done is it has limited the amount of service we can provide to it. We cannot provide the level of service that this infrastructure needs year-round. So, as you've seen even this winter, when we presented to council in December, part of our presentation was acknowledging the fact that we can no longer continue to transition our snowplow operations. Part of this project was to move all snow from the edge of the roadways where our current drainage infrastructure is, where the overall infrastructure citywide is set up to manage that snow load, and we pushed it to the middle. We believe that part of the accident increases we've seen is the fact that we had significant water runoff across the roadways for extended periods of time in ways where we couldn't get ice cinders to help mitigate those issues. So we have had to transition that back. The other piece of it is we no longer have staffing or equipment to service these in the wintertime. So they will not be plowed within snowstorms. We just can't keep up with it. The areas that no longer have curbing will see a service level, but it's going to be that balance. Because there's no parkway in this infrastructure, our goal is to push the snow as far as we can without completely inundating the sidewalks. We do have to find that balance between bicycles and pedestrians. All right, I think we can move on here. All right, I've been in budget for the last like 3 weeks, so slides with a bunch of text is just killing me at this point. So we went to trying to keep it simple, throw some pictures out here to help people understand what does this really look like. On the left, you can see that is the new buffered striping. We had a ton of community complaints across the board, whether it was bicyclists or vehicles in the Sawmill area in particular. So from Lone Tree over to Sawmill, east to Sawmill. So that was one of the big corridors where we removed and transitioned all of the curbing to the double buffer. And that has been something that's worked really well. We've seen significant, just operationally, decrease in impediments across the board. On the right-hand side, this is an area, we've always had issues with this particular area. It's just east of San Francisco on the south side of Butler, right in front of, I believe it's a Conoco right there. I think most people who are familiar with Flagstaff know this area well. It's a shaded area on the south side that has minimal drainage. It's an area that we currently and previously had issues with. When we get into these types of areas like we see on the right-hand side in this picture, the heavy equipment that we utilize, like motor graders, is the best use case we have to try and cut down and cut out as much of that ice as possible. We can no longer access that with the curbing in place. And so this is where we're running into issues, and we're getting significant buildup in some of these areas on the south side of Butler in particular. We're not seeing it as much on Beaver Street, but Butler we are. We just can't get equipment in there that can help mitigate that. And at this point, we've had to reduce service levels across the city, not just this infrastructure. So it's just not receiving the service that it requires for this type of infrastructure. And that same thing in the summertime. We still see road debris. It tends to build up behind these curbs. They still see a lot of impacts. The markers that you see on both ends of these curbs are put in place to help reduce the vehicle strikes. Vehicle strikes on these curbs do tend to break them. And when they break, pieces wind up in the bike lanes. We have to go out and send crews to hand lift those and clean those up by hand most of the time, just because the lane closures are just not as easy to set up in an emergency short period of time response period. So our service levels across the board have significantly dropped on this, as we've seen significant changes in our staffing levels here as well at the city. Next slide, please. One of the pieces that we acknowledged as we were transitioning this out is we realized that there probably wasn't nearly enough of these sharrows listed out there in areas where traffic are coming into roadways, in and out of driveways, things like that. So we've attempted to increase those across this corridor, and it's something we're trying to figure out how do we do that on more of a citywide scale in some of our higher volume corridors, and even some of our tighter infrastructure that have separated bike lanes. And it's one of those pieces we're trying to commit to and find a way to get those increased citywide. We think that's going to be very beneficial. It also helps identify what is this double stripe and what are we trying to separate here. I think it's beneficial just across the board. So one of those items that we've increased on. All right, next slide, please. I've had a lot of questions on, well, what does it mean? You're just adding one more person to go out there and plow these separated bike lanes. Well, it wasn't one more person. And so what I found is a picture is worth 1,000 words. So this is where we're at with this. To make a singular pass on this infrastructure, we have to do it in a way that's safe for everybody. The only way we can do it is to be able to carry all the material at once without impeding cars. So it doesn't just take one additional staff member. It takes one staff member, and we have to pull equipment from 2 other routes to come over and work as kind of pilot vehicles, if you will, to keep vehicles from passing them, from getting impacted by the snow thrower when the snow thrower has the capacity to throw it. And to do that one time through this infrastructure takes them roughly 3 hours to make one pass through the entire infrastructure. Then the crews go back to, the other 2 go back to trying to catch up on their routes. So it's like I said, it's more complicated than just adding one additional piece of equipment. I only bring this up just because we're in the winter time and everybody always asks, well, what does that mean? That it was an increased service level in the winter. So we had this picture here. I think for me, that kind of wraps it up here, David, and I think I hand it back to you if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Yes. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll jump back in here. Again, we're covering 2 topics today. The pilot bike lanes, that was one. And now I'm going to jump into the Butler speed study. And so let's go ahead and start on that. I will cover the purpose of the study, general concepts on how roads are assigned speeds, as well as results, conclusions, and recommendations. So overview of a speed study. Well, during the May 23rd, 2023 special meeting work session, Council tasked us with conducting an engineering speed study along Butler Avenue between Milton Road and Sawmill Road, determine if the speed limit could be lowered. Speed studies take the temperature of the road, they evaluate the existing conditions of the roadway, determine if the established speed limits promote voluntary compliance and reflect the 85th percentile free float speed. They take into consideration context, geometry, pedestrian bicycle use, and crash experience. I'd like to highlight the differences between Route 66 near downtown and the section of Butler Avenue being studied. Route 66 has a speed limit of 30 miles per hour because it has high pedestrian traffic, on-street parking, and multiple direct access storefronts. Butler Avenue has a speed limit of 35 miles per hour because it does not have on-street parking or high density of direct access storefronts. It is common practice for municipalities to have a roadway hierarchy with a range of speeds to serve the travel needs of the community. Speeds can range from 25 miles per hour for local roads to 40 or 45 miles per hour for arterials. This left map shows the different speed limits which exist in Flagstaff's road hierarchy, where the right map shows another example of road hierarchy in Mesa. It should be noted that there is a higher density of 45 and 50 mile per hour roads in Mesa when compared to Flagstaff. And that's pretty typical when we compare ourselves to Phoenix cities. So it's important to note that slower vehicle speed is an important component of Vision Zero, Safe Systems Approach, and the National Safety Strategy. Lower vehicle speeds make the roadway safer for all users. Setting appropriate speed posted speed limits is part of an overall approach to speed management, but may require additional changes, geometry, education, enforcement, things like that. It's good to know that unreasonable posted speed limits will not be followed and may introduce other safety concerns such as speed differential. So it's important that speed limits are accurate for the roads that they're on. It's written in Arizona Revised Statutes, Title 28, that a local authority shall determine by an engineering and traffic investigation the proper maximum speed for all arterial streets in its jurisdiction. This does apply to Butler Avenue because it is an arterial street. These are the current speed limits on Butler. It is 35 miles per hour from Milton Road up in the left to Lone Tree, kind of off to the right in the middle just a bit, and then 40 miles per hour from Lone Tree to Sawmill. All right, so speed zoning concepts. The 85th percentile speed is defined as the speed at or below which 85% of vehicles travel. Speed zoning is based on the principle of setting The limit as near as practical to the speed that 85% of drivers consider to be reasonable and prudent. Speed limits established by an engineering traffic investigation encourage voluntary compliance because they appear reasonable to the majority of motorists. Posted limits that are set higher or lower than those dictated by roadway and traffic conditions are ignored by the majority of motorists. And to improve safety and efficiency, it is desirable for traffic to be going close to uniform speed, as differential in speeds does lead to a higher crash potential. And to encourage uniformity in traffic speeds, to encourage uniformity in traffic speeds, the 85th percentile speed of free-flowing traffic is the standard starting point for determining the appropriate speed limit. All right, so in this chart, in the blue columns, you're going to see the existing posted speed limit at each of these different locations along Butler. And in the orange column, you're going to see what we recorded as the free flow 85th percentile speed along the road. And based on these results, it is apparent that the posted speed limit does align closely with the observed 85th percentile speeds. This chart demonstrates the existing speed limits encourage voluntary compliance and match the context of the roadway, including the level of urbanization, pedestrian activity, and adjacent land uses. It should also be noted that if we reduce the speed limit by 5, we'd anticipate the drivers or assume that they would continue to drive the same. And currently, only about 10% of drivers are exceeding the posted speed limit. But if we lowered it by 5 miles per hour, about 50% of drivers would be exceeding the posted speed limit, which does create an enforcement issue. So the results show the vast majority of drivers are driving at or below the speed limit. The posted speed aligns with the design speed, which does align with the operating speed of the road. And when we compared to other minor arterials in Flagstaff to Butler Avenue, Butler Avenue was average for total crashes and speed-related crashes. And overall, we don't see lowering the speed limit sign alone, the posted speed limit, as an effective way to address crashes. We feel that crashes would have to be addressed in a separate manner. And so for our recommendation, the engineering speed study does conclude that the speed limits on Butler Avenue should remain the same to continue promoting voluntary compliance, encouraging uniform flow, and providing a clear reminder of reasonable and prudent speeds, ensuring an effective enforcement environment. Staff is committed to reevaluating speed limits on Butler Avenue after the completion of the Safe Streets for All Complete Streets grant and the Lone Tree Overpass project. Those are some projects that Trevor had mentioned earlier. And I would now like to wrap things up by highlighting those two projects again that will affect Butler Avenue, the Safe Streets for All grant project and the Lone Tree Overpass project. Both projects include enhanced bicycle and pedestrian features that are new to Flagstaff. So Trevor kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but we are excited to announce that we were awarded the $9.6 million for Safe Streets for All for the Butler corridor. Here's a map of the improvements. They include enhanced pedestrian crossings, protected intersections. We will have the raised bike lanes, like the same level of sidewalk, and there will be places where we can put a parkway between the bikes and pedestrians and the traffic, where right-of-way permits, and that is a good chunk of the corridor. That was one of the inspirations for the project, to kind of make it more comfortable for bikes and pedestrians. I'm going to go ahead and go to 22. Also, the Lone Tree Overpass project will include a protected intersection at Butler and Lone Tree. And this is an aerial view of that project. Includes the wide multi-use paths, bridge over the train tracks, and additional signalized intersections at Lone Tree and Sawmill along Lone Tree Overpass at Sawmill. That's what it was, Lone Tree and Sawmill. Yeah, that intersection. Okay. And then, so I mentioned earlier that we had brought this to the Bicycle Advisory Committee and the Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And overall, they did recommend that the speed limits should be lowered. They felt strongly that with the pedestrians from NAU, with NAU being so close, that the road wasn't appropriately signed. They felt that it would be more appropriate to be a lower speed. And they felt that would also encourage bicyclists and pedestrians to use the infrastructure more. And they also said that they would like to they prefer or insist that the curbs be kept along Butler Avenue and Beaver Street until the construction can begin on the Safe Streets for All project. And so that brings us to the conclusions and recommendations from the engineering department. And well, first of all, thank you for going through all this with me. I know this was a long presentation. I do appreciate the attention. And I know there's a lot of information, but we are recommending transitioning the curbs to double stripes on both Beaver Street and Butler, and keeping the speed limit on Butler Avenue the same. The goal of setting speed limits is uniform traffic flow, which is achieved by setting appropriate speed limits. And we want to provide a clear reminder of reasonable and prudent speeds and encourage that uniform flow. And we are committed to reevaluating the speeds on Butler Avenue after the completion of our future projects. And with that, that'll take us to the end of the presentation, and thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, David. So again, we'll go through commissioner questions, and then we'll have public comment, and then we'll have commissioner discussion. So are there commissioner questions for David and team?
Ooh, and Chair Koenig, I just wanted to remind everyone that we are bringing the comments and feedback from commission to council as well. So yes.
Hey, David and Sam, just a quick question and conversation as it relates to the sharrows that we have been placing throughout town. Is there public awareness, additional public awareness campaigns going on as to sharrows and their intent for sharing the road, and with that enforcement to observe and correct behaviors? Because I often see drivers passing, not completely leaving the lane.
So is that question for me, Justin?
For anyone who may have an answer. We have them on the NAU campus. However, the student population, I'm not certain of the communication and the intent of sharrows, and they're often disregarded by drivers, less bicyclists.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things I can control. The messaging on that, I'd hope that, our bicycle commissions can help get that word out, and some of our partner agencies can help educate. I don't know what the best path forward is on the education piece to help people understand what the meaning of these are. I see Kate's got her hand up, though. She's usually got an answer.
Sometimes, Sam. Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair, Metro Plan is planning to conduct a Safe People campaign aligned with the Safe Systems approach in FY25. And so we don't have that campaign totally outlined, but if people have ideas about the issues they're seeing, such as could you do education on sharrows, you can pass those along to us, and I think we're happy to add them into our campaign. So.
Okay, thank you.
Just go ahead and chime in, commissioners. I can't see who has their hands up or not. So yeah, just let your voice be known.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for Sam or David. I know we looked at the crash information on Butler last year after the big winter we had last year, and I can't recall, was there also an increase in accidents during the summer months as well, or was that primarily during the winter with the snow?
It was across both seasons. Like we noticed once the curves went in, there was an increase in crashes involving curbs. Like they were actually coded as like a vehicle hitting a curb. So there was an uptick in those, and I would have to check. I think it was fairly equal, but I think there might have been a few more in the winter time.
Okay.
But it wasn't like one was way more than the other. I think they're about the same.
Okay. And then another question with the transitioning from the curb to the double stripe. Have you received feedback from the bicycle commission as well? Or advisory committee, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so when we met with, it was actually a joint meeting between the BAC and the PAC. And both of them were in conclusion or agreed on their recommendations to lower the speed limit by 5 and to keep the barriers.
And to keep the curb barriers?
Yeah.
But I will note there was no negative feedback on the buffered stripes. Honestly, as we were presenting to them, there seemed to be a lot of receptive head nods, but no negative comments versus that. I think it's a comfortability piece with the perception of that buffer.
Certainly. And then one last question for me, with the future improvements that are come with the SSFA grant, do you anticipate that the revision to the geometry of the roadway is going to affect your recommendation for the speed or what we're going to see? I know that that you're committed to doing additional studies to verify the 85th percentile, but based on the geometry, do you affect the geometry changes? Do you expect that would affect what your recommendation would be for that speed?
Yes, we think because we're raising the bike lane to the same level as the sidewalk, that will add even more narrowing to the road because visually you'll see the curb there instead of just the barriers that are existing today. So we think they will, but we won't really know until we go out there and measure it. But yeah, I guess short answer, we do think there will be an impact on these. Like when, for example, when we put the medians in on Butler, like years ago in 2000, I actually don't know the exact date, somewhere in the early 2000s, like 2005, 2008, we did see a reduction in speeds along the road after that geometry change. And so I think we're expecting some decrease. We're not sure how much, but that's why we want to revisit it afterwards.
Thank you. I guess I have one more question as well. And I apologize if I missed it in the presentation, but what's the time frame do you expect for those improvements that would be funded by the SSFA grant?
I believe we are anticipating doing design. I don't think Trevor's still in this meeting. He had it all kind of lined out on his slide, but design this year, 2024, 2025, and potentially at the end of 2025, potentially beginning construction, but if not, it'd be at the beginning of 2026. So I'd say at this point, we're aiming for construction in late 2025, early 2026.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioner questions? Okay, I've got my own little list here. Thank you, David. Thank you, Sam, for your presentation. Sam, with your suggestion to take them out, when do you anticipate that would happen?
Yeah, it's not going to be an immediate transition. It would be part of our spring program. Honestly, they're kind of coming out now. Just in the last 24 hours, we've had 8 of them destroyed. So as they get broken or pushed out, we have to go out and kind of remove them by hand at this point. The snow shift supervisors do it just because we don't have any crews. They're all snow plowing. But yeah, we wouldn't get to the final transition until spring, early spring.
I have a question on, I think it was slide 11 or slide 12, David.
Yeah.
You compare Route 66 to Butler, and there was a comment on Route 66 having more direct business access compared to Butler. And I guess if I look at Sawmill, that seems like a mess and a ton of business access by Sawmill. So how does that not compare to 66 as far as like people driving in and out of it?
No, that's a good point. We differentiated it just because those businesses on Sawmill, you do need to exit or onto like a street and then turn into their parking lots. But on Route 66, you have more just single parking lots right up on the street. So there's more people accessing from multiple points along Route 66 versus Butler, even though there are a few streets that they can turn onto to get into Sawmill, when they leave Sawmill, they all have to go back to one of those streets to make their left or right, and there is to make their left or right on the street.
Okay. And I also have a question around similar. You had sort of compared the pedestrians, and I guess I certainly see a lot more pedestrians walking along Route 66, especially in that downtown area. But I also see a ton of people crossing Butler. And so do you have pedestrian counts of those two different areas and the crossings? Because it seems like it's still a pretty high pedestrian area, at least at Beaver and Humphreys, or sorry, San Francisco.
It is. There is high pedestrians using Humphreys as well as downtown. I don't believe we have pedestrian counts. I might look to Jeff or Martin to back me up on that, but I think generally we know that there's more people at the downtown, but that's not to say that there is a good amount of pedestrian use at Butler as well. I think ultimately though, we're of the opinion that 35 is still appropriate based on the other conditions of the road.
Okay. I have a question for Lieutenant Ryan Turley, if he's still here. If 10% of people are typically going over this speed, do we know how often speeding tickets are written for Butler currently compared to other roads, or?
Yes, I do. 0.
Okay.
There's
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the reason why is it's almost impossible to do traffic enforcement just for speed alone on Butler Avenue. There's no areas for my officers to safely be off the road to be able to get accurate speed readings.
Okay. As a side question, is there does the police department put out any kind of annual report on traffic interactions it has, whether it's crashes or speeding tickets or other kind of tickets?
Yes, sir, it does. Every year we have an annual report. It usually doesn't get out till June or July. But if you go online, you could search and you can find probably as many annual reports as you'd like.
Excellent. I look forward to it. I think that's the only questions that I have. I'll do a last call for questions from the commissioners. If I don't hear anything, then we'll go to public comment.
Commissioner Koenig, I have one more question. On the speed limit study, David, that was completed with the curb in place, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Was there a study perhaps completed prior to those being put in place? Because I would imagine that would influence people's speed as well, having that narrower roadway.
We did evaluate the speeds on the road before the barriers were installed as well as after, and we saw only a minor decrease in speed. We saw the 85th go from, I believe, 35 to 34. But it should be noted that we didn't change the speed limit signs on the road, and there have been some arguments that maybe if that had been done in tandem, that it would have had an effect. But at least the barriers by themselves seem to not actually slow people down as much as we would have thought or had hoped.
Okay, thank you.
Well, maybe that's why they hit them so often.
That's been posed to us as well, that might have been part of the equation, that since it was still posted fast and people are, oh, I can drive this fast, maybe that's why we're hitting them. We typically we believe that the infrastructure is self-enforcing, that how the road is designed kind of dictates how people are driving, and we think maybe just the barriers, how they were installed, or maybe the widths, just whatever elements for whatever reason, they weren't really reducing the speeds like we would have hoped.
I have a question on those accidents. The increase in accidents were those property damage only, or were there injuries associated with those as well with the collisions with the curbs?
I would have to check for sure. I believe most of them were property damage only. But I'd have to look again to get a number on the actual like serious versus property damage only. But the majority were property damage only.
Thanks.
Of course.
Well, let's open it up for public comment then. Any members of the public? Again, I can't see who you are if you have your hand raised, so just go ahead and chime in and start talking.
Hello, it's Sam again. Thank you, commissioners, and David and other Sam for your presentation, which I got to see last week. I had a couple comments to make about that, specifically around, I'll try to break them into segments, but specifically around the 85th percentile as a way of evaluating appropriate speeds for a road. After this was presented to the PAC and the BAC, I did some light Googling to see what pedestrian and bicycle safety organizations and advocacy organizations have to say about using that as a way to evaluate safe speeds for a road. Because a lot of our discussion centered around the fact that the 85th percentile focuses on the needs of cars and drivers and their current behavior, and not on the safety concerns of pedestrians or bicyclists. And I found a study that I'll put in the chat from the National Association of City Transportation Officials that indicates basically that a lot of places use the 85th percentile, which I'm sure is no surprise to the traffic engineers. But that also it's really not useful in a lot of urban contexts, and specifically in terms of safety planning or Vision Zero-like efforts, because it doesn't take into account other factors in terms of speed and road speed. One of the things discussed in the report is that the original study that led to the 85th percentile being used as this metric was done on rural two-lane highways, and it is now being implemented in urban streets that have other forms of infrastructure, such as bike lanes and pedestrian crossings and all kinds of other things. That association, NACTO, indicates that really traffic engineers and other folks who are looking to improve pedestrian and bicyclist safety need to use other ways of doing it, because the standards don't necessarily address those concerns. And it's my understanding that the reason that city staff were directed to look into this was to address safety concerns for bicyclists and pedestrians. So I just want to say, I think, I'm totally sympathetic to having standards for your work that don't align with the current needs. In my day job, I work in a library, and you would be shocked at how the physical card catalog continues to undergird almost everything we do. Many of you in the room have probably never even seen a card catalog, but I guarantee you've dealt with its remnants. So I'm really sympathetic to that, but I think, from the point of view of trying to improve safety along Butler, which is a major crossing area and borders campus, I don't think looking at, that kind of metric is going to do it, quite simply. I think we're going to continue to see issues there. Related to that, I wanted to say that I also reviewed some of the crash data for pedestrians and cyclists that the city put out for the period of 2017 to 2021, because my recollection was that Butler was one of the highest crash areas. And indeed, that is the case. I'll drop that in the chat too. There are a lot of collisions that happen. Fortunately, not very many of them resulting in fatalities, but there are a lot of collisions specifically at intersections, which is why we're also stoked about the protected intersections. I think that addresses some of the concerns that pedestrians and cyclists have around vehicle travel speeds, because of course, if the vehicle is traveling 35 or higher, the likelihood of serious injury or death is much higher for a pedestrian or cyclist, right? I think I have seen various stats, but risk of severe injury at 35 miles per hour for a pedestrian is 50% to 75%. Risk of death is 25%, right? So having that higher speed is really consequential for pedestrians and cyclists in a way that's not necessarily for drivers who are contained in a metal box. I'll stop now because my voice is giving out, but I did want to very quickly say that I'm also sympathetic to the concerns around maintenance for the protected bike lanes, the curbed bike lanes. I ride both of those routes very frequently, and I have seen the curb destruction that Sam mentioned and the other hazards in those roadways. Speaking as a cyclist, I think folks are interested in keeping those in place, because otherwise what we see is that vehicles do not treat those bike lanes as bike lanes. They treat them as driving space. And all of the feedback that the city has gathered on the pilot project, to me, indicates that that is the case. Folks talking about the road feeling narrower when the curbs are actually placed in some instances either right on or inside the painted bike lane, to me indicates that they were driving in that area before, right? Or that they could have been driving in that area before. So I think, you know, I completely understand the snow concerns. I completely understand the staffing concerns, the machinery concerns. And I think from a bicyclist perspective, I would still rather not be able to use those lanes for a couple weeks when it snows, but have them the rest of the year and know that I won't be sideswiped, than get rid of them. So thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Any other public comments?
Hi, I'm Kim Austin. Thank you, Sam and David, for your wonderful presentation, and Mr. Chair. I really appreciate. I just have one question. What the speed study that was conducted pre barriers in place, was it during the summer months or when NAU was in session or not? Because I'm wondering if that may have affected the numbers or not. That was just my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. That study was conducted in the fall, I believe in October. So it was when school was in session.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Chair Koenig, I wanted to ask Jeff, or do we have any other public comment? I can wait till after.
Yeah, any last public comment? Speak up now, or we're gonna move on. Hearing nothing? Go ahead, David.
Thank you, Joe, or Chair Koenig. I just wanted to touch base with Jeff. I know we want comments and feedback for the council. Is this the time for that, or is there something else we need to do, Jeff?
No, this is perfect to have the council commissioner discussion and the public input. So yeah, we'll just keep taking notes as we get input, and we'll summarize that for council for our discussion later this month. So no, you're at a good spot.
Excellent. Well, we're on a commissioner discussion now. So what are your thoughts, commissioners? I see somebody raise their hand. If they're commissioner, go ahead and speak.
Well, this is Jim McCarthy. I'm in my own
ahead,
category. Just a couple comments. The picture that's on the screen, I pointed out at the pedestrian and bicycle committee meetings that the one on the right really doesn't show what it's like in the area of Beaver and San Francisco to get across those streets. It's actually, there's a lot of, you know, that picture, it looks like, you know, rural, nothing's going on. But as we know, at those two intersections, there's a lot going on. A lot of people, a lot of bicycles going across. The other point I'll make is, and this came up in the pedestrian and bicycle meetings, is that, yes, the 85 percentile is one of the tools that traffic engineers use to make a determination of what the speed should be. But a lot of the recognized methods also say that you should take into account how much pedestrian and bicycle traffic there is, and not just focus on that one thing of the 85 percentile. And so we need to take all of these things into consideration before we make a recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember McCarthy.
Thank you.
Well, so I'll kick off some of the discussion. This is also kind of a discussion / question for you, David, and so I figured I'd save it now. You bring up that picture of Phoenix as a comparison of what other cities do. My questions are, do we have data that shows that Phoenix has more or less traffic accidents or more or less pedestrian or bicycle safety than Flagstaff does?
Yes, we do have data. It's tough because there's so many cities down in Phoenix, but I do have the city of Phoenix does create a crash report, but you can imagine they're much larger than we are, and it's hard sometimes to understand exactly how they compared to Flagstaff, but they do have considerably more bicycle and pedestrian fatalities than Flagstaff. But a lot of that could probably be attributed to how much larger it is, because I think there's a couple million people in the valley, and in Flagstaff we only have 80,000. So we do have those comparison points, and we could find more if we want to have a more comprehensive idea.
Well, I think it comes up I think the discussion point I want to have is like, what would be the city Flagstaff to want to compare itself to? And, it seems like, and this would be a conversation that the city council could have, of what it seems like the vision we have of what Flagstaff is of this like walkable downtown. There's a carbon target. I think one of the things people like about Flagstaff is this walkable downtown, which doesn't always align with what, I think of Mesa or other areas of Phoenix. So like, is there a better place we'd want to judge ourselves of than Mesa? And yeah, I don't know what other commissioners think of that. Well, hearing nothing, I'll keep on talking.
Shy today. Yeah.
So
Jeff's got a hand up, maybe.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and it's something that we have considered a bit. Like Flagstaff is starting at a certain point with their road network and their speed limits and things. You can see on the screen Mesa is starting at a much different place, and we've all been to the valley. It's much different, so it wasn't like we're trying to compare apples to apples here. But the idea was kind of the hierarchy, and many places start at a certain point. It's been hard to figure out how to benchmark this type of thing. Like, what is a normal speed for an arterial? In Mesa it's 45 and 50. In Flagstaff it's like 35 and 40. So we're like 10, 15 under them to start as a baseline. Probably our streets look different too, and we have mountainous terrain, so it's really hard to get. It's hard to figure out what is that benchmarking. Is it the speed limit map? So that's what I wanted to ask you back. Is it like benchmarking speed limit map? Is it benchmarking crash rates? Because that's easier to find, and we do really well compared to the valley, compared to the state, compared to, I think I was looking at Portland. We're much better than Portland for crash rates and fatality rates per 100,000 people, that kind of stuff. So we're really good in the safety metrics typically. But what were you thinking for like a comparison?
I guess I don't necessarily have a specific city in mind, but more of like, part of the conversation with the council is, I think we elect council to help provide some vision, and sort of, they are a selection of the community as well. And so like, what does Flagstaff vision want to be, and what priorities do we want to set, and how do we balance the priority of, walkable downtown with efficiency of getting around, and those kind of hard questions that, we put to the elected people, not to the salaried people.
Okay, so more general vision, you weren't looking for specific metrics of comparison to other like communities. That's what I was trying to drill down to.
Yeah.
So now I get it.
Yep. And I think like, so part of my thought also I asked, do we have numbers on how many people are walking in downtown versus walking and crossing the street? And, like, it's always hard to get numbers. When are you taking those numbers? Who's out there? How often are you doing it? And, I would almost propose that the numbers may not be as important as much as our vision of like, well, do we want to encourage that sort of like, we know it's that sort of a town where there's a lot of mixed living and businesses and restaurants and school and all this other kind of thing. And so, like, do we need to have those exact numbers that say, oh, Butler has 30% less pedestrians crossing it than 66 does? Or do we want to say it's all within our downtown core of a space that we want to be, prioritize pedestrians and bicyclists over vehicles? It would also be interesting with that City of Flagstaff map, with you guys presenting all of the upcoming stuff, of adding the future JW Powell 4th Street connection into that, just as like hey, also in a couple of years, we'll have this other big arterial connecting things that'll sort of help to bypass some of this downtown space.
Yeah, that's a huge struggle here. We try, as you and I have talked a bit offline, Flagstaff doesn't have this cute grid that Mesa does, where you can create awesome things on one street and then parallel do something different for another user. We try to do everything on every street. We're trying to move 20,000, when Lone Tree opens, closer to 30,000 vehicles a day on Butler. And we're trying to make it really comfortable to walk and bike along and cross and aesthetically pleasing. And yeah, we have big challenges in Flagstaff. That wasn't a surprise to you, but yeah, this is one of them.
Yeah. And, my other comments is also like, there's a lot of stoplights on Butler, and I rarely, like, does 35 make sense for a road that has, where you're stopping every couple hundred, whatever, quarter mile or whatever that is in some sections as well? And how often are you getting up to speed versus are you, just transitioning from one stoplight to the next? Any other commissioners want to chime in at all?
While we're having this, conversation about safety on this Butler corridor, one thing I would really like to encourage us to try is maybe at Butler and Beaver and San Francisco, look at a leading pedestrian crosswalk indicator. Maybe that's coming when the whole project is done and we have these protected intersections, but why don't we try that ahead of time and get feedback of how pedestrians and cyclists feel as we upgraded this? We might even want to try that at Beaver and San Francisco at 66 as well, because those are pretty busy intersections, and those might be good pilot studies to do there with these leading pedestrian indicators. So just a thought, and I don't know if there's any feedback from David or not on that.
Certainly. Yes. So the leading ped interval is going to be part of all the protected intersections in the Safe Streets for All grant. We will also have bike signals at the intersections. So that's another element to those intersections. As far as doing it early as a pilot, I might look to Jeff on that if that's feasible. Like, it might be that since it's so imminent, we might just focus on waiting until we have the complete project, or there might be opportunity because it is like a year, maybe 2 years before it happens, but it'll all depend on kind of the timing.
Yeah, to confirm, that's part of the design for those intersections. It will first be implemented at Butler and Lone Tree, which is much further along than the other projects along that corridor. We've looked a little bit into it, and I think we have some challenges with the hardware, the software specifically that's out there, but we are exploring it for a pilot somewhere, and we're also, prior to kind of just piloting it in places, and these are probably good places, but typically cities have developed some sort of thresholds. So you do LPIs, leading pedestrian interval, or delayed vehicles, really what it is, because the ped leaves at the same time as the vehicles you're delaying. typically it's like, 75% of the time during an hour, you have pedestrians there pushing the button. That would be a good location to do an LPI. So there's typically some thresholds and criteria set up, and we just haven't gone through that effort yet to figure out kind of where those boundary conditions would be for us here. But I think Beaver and San Francisco for certain hours of the day would probably meet those requirements. So yeah, good suggestion. And it's definitely on our list. We've just got, it's just, yeah, constantly things coming in that we'd like to try and do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Brennan.
And Chair Koenig, I'm curious, I wanted to ask Jeff, are we looking for kind of direct comments on this, like whether the speed limit should be lowered and like if we want to remove the barriers, or do we want to try to direct it that specifically?
So we're just looking for feedback. We don't need a motion. We didn't agendize this with action or a motion. So the way, and we talked about this last 2 months ago, the city code says the traffic engineer sets speed limits, but of course city council can do whatever they want. So that's the process that we're going through, is we're kind of getting feedback on the traffic engineering program's recommendation, and then we'll go to city council and have the same discussion. So we don't need formal. If you can, Chair, kind of summarize at some point, if it's feeling like we can do that, that's great. That helps us out. But we will summarize the discussion. So but we don't need action.
Well, as always, other commission members, feel free to chime in. I guess I will state my opinion on the things they request, and then if people feel otherwise, they can chime in, and maybe your silence will be your agreement with me. So yeah, that's the ticket. We'll see if we can get some more engagement this way with who doesn't agree with me. So there's a couple things as far as the speed limit. I support that the speed limit should be lowered by 5 miles per hour or some amount. And when that happens specifically, it seems like it's a good opportunity with the new construction. And you had mentioned doing another speed limit study after the construction. I would really encourage you to change the speed limit first and then do a study, because it's this kind of chicken and egg thing. It's like, well, we left it at 35 and everybody's still driving 35, so it seems fine. And I think if you change it to 30 and everybody still drives at 35 2 or 3 months later, that's a lot more convincing to me personally than the other way. So that's how I feel about the speed limit. Do other commissioners feel otherwise? See a thumbs up from Brendan.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to me as well. I mean, lowering it to the 30, especially in that from Milton over to, over past Beaver Street. And then I would, my 2 cents on thinking about that, the curb and versus the painted and the separated bike lane, and then knowing that in a couple of years down the road, we're actually gonna have the grade separated bike pathway. I mean, I would think with lowering, my opinion is with lowering the speed limit, that probably also adds a little bit to consideration, the argument for removing the curb and then doing the painted bikeways that are kind of already happening as those curbs disappear. Seems like we're headed that direction one way or the other. Just how quick it happens. But yeah, no, as we're having the conversation, those things kind of come together in my mind, the speed limit and then also removing those curbs.
Yeah, and then we talk about that 35 limit, but it is 40 in front of Sawmill, and that seems like it's always a little dicey with the people making a right to go in, people coming out, people trying to cross over to get in there. So considering the density of activity in the Sawmill area compared to the further down area by Warner's and Homeco, I would encourage you to consider, continuing the same speed limit from Milton to all the way to the end of Sawmill, and not having it change at Sawmill. As for the curbs, thank you so much, John, for providing your input on that. If you're going to take them out in the spring, I would encourage you to take them out in the fall. And if we're going to take them out in the fall, I would say it's worth just having a check. And I'd be optimistic that someday we'll fill all the hiring positions we have in all of these important places, whether it's and if we're still behind in the fall, then yeah, I would say it might make sense to take them out then before the next snow season. That's also an opportunity in the fall to be able to understand the planning that's been done for I forget what you call the project, but elevating the bike lanes through that corridor. And that would be a good check into, when is that construction going to happen? And, if it's pushed off by another year, then it's less desirable to remove them than have them remain. My other comment is in previous meetings, I have expressed a lot of skepticism about the ability of paint and like having 2 painted lines versus 1 painted line make any difference at all compared to a curb. And I do want to say I really appreciate that the city and the staff painted the lines all the ways down to the intersection with Ponderosa Parkway, and I think it is better than I expected. And I was surprised at how nice it was to have those 2 painted lines compared to 1 painted line. And I also want to take note of the pedestrian advisory committee and the bicycle advisory committee and their recommendations as well. And so I guess I'm hedging here around leave them in a little bit longer and let's punt until the next fall instead of tearing them out in the spring right before the summer season.
With reevaluating them in the fall, see like where we're at with maintenance and the project.
Correct.
Gotcha. All right.
And last chance for any other commissioner comments, but I'm not seeing anything.
Chair Koenig, can you hear me? This is Commissioner
ahead,
Eckhoff.
yep. Thanks.
Yeah, I just want to put in a voice of support for what you raised, Chair Koenig. And just to go back to comments I've made in previous meetings about the removal of the barriers and really the philosophical commitment that we're making to prioritizing bicycle and pedestrian safety, I think they remain. This is exciting that the Safe Streets for All funding was awarded. And so having the removal of those barriers coalesce with the raised, the bike lane, et cetera, I think is just going to continue to send a message to our community that we take this seriously, that we take bicycle and pedestrian safety seriously. The removal of the barriers right now, I understand it would be easier for snow removal, et cetera. But I, for one, do not support that move. So thanks, Chair Koenig, for raising these points and expressing it the way you have.
Great. But with that, I think we'll end that section.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you all so much.
So the next, including general business, is there any information from commissioners or staff on those items there?
Yes. Jeff, for that first one, commissioner discussion, what was that item?
That's just open discussion for commissioners.
Okay. I think we're good on that one. So if everyone's all right, I'll jump to number 2.
Yep.
All right. So Boulder Point traffic calming, I do have updates on that. Of course, Woodland Drive is incorporated into Boulder Point traffic calming. They're effectively the same project, like they're part of the same bid. But we have advertised for that, and we have had several potential bidders look at the project, and we're keeping it advertised, I think, for the next couple of weeks, and then we'll see how people bid on it and see what kind of prices we get. So that's where we're at with that. We're still anticipating building this year in the spring or summer. So that's where that is. Crash report at this time, we did, I don't know if we mentioned at the last meeting, submit for a road safety assessment along Highway 89 through ADOT, where they would come with some professionals to walk the street with us and to come up with solutions to some of the issues on the road. So that's ongoing. And we are also looking into the Highway Safety Improvement Program application, which is open and is due in May. So we're using the report to inform that, look at places where it's mostly fatalities and serious injuries, and see if there's anything that we can apply for. We're hoping to do a systemic application, which will include retroreflective backplates, things like that, things that we could do citywide. We're still trying to figure out how applicable that will be, but we'll keep you informed as that develops. And then I think Steph has a quick update on engineering standards.
Thanks, David. Yeah, just a quick update. We came to Transportation Commission back in December. We also went to BAC-PAC back in December as well. We went to the Commission on Inclusion and Adaptive Living also in December, just to give them an update on some of the engineering standard changes that we've made. We did a presentation to the Business Advocacy Division. That was January 18th. We opened up a survey for community members, local engineers, developers, everyone to put comments in. We have received some comments back from that survey. We also had 2 public meetings, one January 31st and the second one February 1st. One was in person and one was online only, and we had some pretty good attendance to those. I always say if the attendees outnumber the staff, then we had a successful public meeting. So both of those were successful considered. So yeah, we think the survey closed the end of this week. So I think we have a couple more days. We're going to meet internally. We go to council on February 27th and have another couple council meetings to read some ordinances and fun stuff like that. So we're moving forward with these engineering standard changes, and that's all I had. Thanks.
Thanks, Steph. Thanks, David. Well, with that, our next regular scheduled meeting is for, is it for April 3rd, 2024? Or is it for, yeah, April 3rd, yep. No tentative agenda items, so I look forward to seeing what comes out in the agenda ahead of that meeting.
We'll come up with something, I'm sure.
And with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for the extra time.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thanks all. Good night.